Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the staff scheduling app for hospitality teams. RotaCloud lets you create and share rotas, record attendance, and manage your team's annual leave, all in less time than it takes to make a brew. It can also make life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request holiday, and even pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is one of my old mates, Marc Thompson, Manager Enrichment Programming for the stunning Seabourn cruise lines. Coming up on today's show, Marc tells us about stories from life at sea.
Yeah, share a few stories as well that often sometimes you forget and maybe block from your mind.
Phil talks about one of life's great mysteries. Isn't it amazing how irate people can get over under or overcooked broccoli? And Marc recounts an embarrassing moment.
Unfortunately for me as well, that was during a time people do have video cameras.
All that and so much more as Marc chats us through his wonderful career journey so far. One final thing before we get into it, if you could take a moment to subscribe to the show and leave us a cheeky review on your favourite podcast app, it really would help more than I can say. Enjoy. And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to one of my oldest shipmates, and that's not in terms of your age, by the way. Marc Thompson, welcome to the show.
Oh, Phil, great to be with you. Thank you for having me today. Yeah, I hope you mean oldest as in our years working together, not the fact that I'm now in my 50s.
Yes, well, you know, that's, 25 odd years ago now that we were working together? 25?
Yeah, you're right, 23, 24 years. So, gosh, many moons ago.
Yeah,
God. I had hair. I was slim. Yes, the good old days.
You're still slim. That's fine.
Camera, I won't stand up.
Yeah, but you've actually got one of when I was, I suppose, doing my research. I had a look on LinkedIn to see what you were actually up to these days. You're one of these people that I've known for so long, and half the time I've just not a clue what you do. And the job title that you have now is awesome. Manager Enrichment Programming.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Yeah, what is that all about?
Yeah, I have to say, it's probably taken quite a long time to get here, but I do have the most brilliant job now. So still connected to the cruise industry, which of course you and I know each other from a few decades ago. But essentially, I take care of what we call guest enrichment. So most people going on board a cruise ship, maybe you've not been on a cruise ship before, or, maybe you're familiar with the cruise ship environment, but we have what we call on board guest speakers. So the brand I work with, we will bring on board everything from celebrity chefs, well-celebrated sporting heroes, people from film, media, business world, technology. And I essentially manage that program for Seabourn Cruise Line, which is an ultra-luxury cruise brand that I'm with now and have been for quite some time. So I work with these people, I engage to bring on board new talent, I deal with their scheduling, the logistics of their travel, and essentially just work with them to ensure that they bring out the best stories to enrich our guests on board. So our guests learn something new or will basically experience a different conversation with somebody that never actually would have come into contact with in normal everyday life.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I suppose that's taking experience up to a new level. You're now enriching people's lives as opposed to just focusing on the experience itself.
Yes, I think obviously there's a lot of, let's say, opinions around the cruise industry, which obviously is a massive part of hospitality. The number of people that travel on cruise ships every year. I mean, literally, it's
still
millions.
Going up as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest growth areas actually within the hospitality industry. And there are cruise ships out there for everybody. It's like hotels, you've got those small, really ultra luxury ships. You've got those mass market, larger ships. So cruise ships are out there sort of catering for every different type of holiday maker. But again, it's also people look for different things for that onboard experience. And for some people, they are really going for that level of enrichment, that entertainment, that either growing their mind or learning a new skill. So the great thing is that with the program I look after, we can really give that varied offering for our guests on board. So very interesting. I speak to and meet people that are just, it's incredible the achievements that they have in life that I would never have actually normally come across if it wasn't for the work that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So yes, so I'm very fortunate in the position that I'm in.
Yeah. That sounds really, really cool. Do you know what? When I was writing some notes ahead of our chat today, I had, I don't know if you know this, but I indirectly wrote a marketing piece for P&O without even realizing it way back in the beginning when I worked for them, because I don't know if we worked together on my very first contract, but I was like a little puppy and wide-eyed, and the world was just amazing, and I loved the job, and everything was just fantastic. And I remember saying to one of the three stripers at the time, Jane, whose second name escapes me at this point in time, she was
Jane
awesome.
Green.
Yes, Jane Green. Yeah, she was absolutely brilliant. I remember coming into work one day and just going, life doesn't get any better than this. And then I saw that in P&O's marketing 2 years later, and I always wondered,
There you go. That's your legacy.
Yeah, so I've got one. I've got one for Seabourn now as well. Yeah, just so there are cruise lines, and then there's Seabourn.
Oh, and you know what? That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
We are totally out there as the very niche, very premium, very a product that certainly was not replicated across the market. So I think you could be onto something there.
I've got a side hustle in the making here, just doing marketing taglines for everyone.
That's your legacy anyway. It's good to know that they're still creating that. Well, I think it's unbelievable holiday happiness at P&O now that they have.
Right. Yeah, I definitely didn't do that one for sure. But anyway, right. Well, let's get into your journey, and let's head all the way back to the beginning. How did you get into hospitality in the first place?
Well, for me, actually, by accident, which is probably not uncommon, actually. I started my career at the age of 16, going straight into HR. Back in the days in local government, I was very fortunate. I was at night schools doing my A-levels. I was actually working for Clark's shoe shop straight away as soon as I left school. It was a depressed working town, essentially, that I was living in the northeast. And even back then, the job situation, there wasn't these great opportunities that you see now. There wasn't social media back then. It was a very traditional way of work, really. So I was studying at night, and a fellow student said to me, "Oh, we're looking for people in local government, come and work with us." So I did that for 7 years in human resources. And the only reason I mention that now is I think it's that whole communication, that people relationship side of HR that I really loved, and thought, okay, I want to take this further. And I actually wanted to travel, but a typical job in local government back then wasn't particularly that well paid. So in my early 20s,
travel either.
No, exactly, yeah. Well, this is it. I then went and again, through the connections that you have, I worked with somebody that told me to go and be a Thomson holiday rep. So back in 1997, I took a job at £50 a week, which was actually less than I was earning in local government, and went to be a holiday rep, which I thought, okay, this is great. I'll get paid. I'll be abroad. I'll start to live my life and, really get that excitement, that enrichment of being overseas country. And I ended up being placed in a tiny little resort in Austria with 3 small hotels and about 4 guests a week that were all keen walkers that came and visited my hotel. So I spent most nights playing Scrabble with them because, again, it was those days without any internet. But I loved it. I loved the whole connection with people, and thought this is actually an industry I want to stay in. I progressed very quickly with Thomson. Back then, obviously, they're now known as TUI, but they were still then a massive hospitality holiday company. So
it's because of your surname, probably, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly. That helped.
Thomson,
I'd always get yes, you were one of the sons of the owners. But do you think I'd be working in this hotel if my dad owned this company? But I'd sort of made the most of that time, a couple of years, sort of grounding my feet in hospitality, which when you worked as a holiday rep, my God, you did get that whole grounding.
I can only imagine the life you get. Well, I mean, we'll probably come on to the life that you got to see when on a cruise ship. But as a holiday rep as well, I can imagine that there's some dark stories in the background somewhere.
Yeah, quite a few, which I'm actually quite thankful at that time there was no social media around, actually, to probably report most of them.
It was a simpler time.
Yes. So, I do remember that then I moved on to within Thomson, then I went on to Thomson cruise ships, of which point Holiday Watchdog was quite a well-watched program in the TV. So I do remember these large sort of camcorder type videos coming and pointed at me when I was on the Thomson cruise rep desk when people were going going to their cabins, and they weren't quite necessarily the standard that Thomson brochure had shown them. But as I say, this was quite some time ago. Obviously, things have really greatly improved and changed. But that really led to my career within hospitality and obviously the cruise industry, of which over the last 20 years I've been really part of. Apart from a few short periods of time on land in hotels, I've always drifted back to that one common sort of denominator in the sense of being at sea, or at least connected with sea.
Yeah. Was that then at the beginning of your career, was that really the main driver, being wanted to see a little bit of the world? It wasn't so much at that point around, this is what I want to do, this is the direction I'm going to take. What I want to do is go travel and then kind of see what happens.
Exactly right. Yeah. So I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Even in my 20s, I'd never thought I want to be in HR. I'd never sort of had that career-driven thing of, how some people probably grow up and think they always want to be a vet, or they want to be, a dental surgeon or whatever. I didn't ever actually have that in mind. So I think for me, I thought, let me go and travel, take a year out almost. But actually then I stayed and just loved the travel, but getting paid while you travel. And again, I was very fortunate that I'd learned sort of in my early days in retail as well. If you can work in a shoe shop in Middlesbrough, it's a good setting and grounding for the rest of your life, dealing with people's feet and measuring children's shoes for Clark shoes back then, but dealing with anxious parents. So from that age, I think, from then I thought, actually enjoy the interaction with people, and let's do this as a paid career. And it just sort of went from there, really. And obviously, but maybe many of the listeners don't, to work on the cruise ship is just a phenomenal experience, to have that ability to see so many different places in a short space of time and to be paid to be going there.
Oh. At that age as well. When you're,
absolutely. When you're in 20s.
Yeah, and I was like a wide-eyed little puppy, as I said earlier on. And yeah, it was just I will never ever forget my first port that we went to, which was Madeira. Funchal was an absolutely stunning place in the world. And I remember back then getting up, with the sun to come in to watch the ship, dock and kind of just absorb the whole experience. And as you say, at the age we were, and somebody's paying you to wake up somewhere different every day. And okay, yes, it's quite a tough job at times. But nevertheless, you kind of, for me, it always, the joy of knowing that you were, I don't know, one day out of Barcelona, or, tomorrow you're going to be in Sydney. That was the whole reason why I did that job at the beginning. And then you realize that actually there's one hell of a career you can forge for yourself here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we follow the same paths initially for those first few years, and almost organically, you get to know your job well, you do it well, you learn from it, and then you move up to the next rank. And obviously then that sort of whole merchant navy formality of when we were working there at sea, and then obviously you have the tax benefits as well. And it was a lot of great things, I think, at that time kept me there ultimately for years, when originally it was just going to be an initial stopgap. Then you go from that appreciation of getting up early on a sunrise to see those new ports of call. But then you've seen those ports, you end up probably going to bed when the sun rises. because of the flip side of that, it's a social life on board, and working with those colleagues hard during the day, and then, enjoying yourselves at night together. So yes. Great times.
That old work hard, play hard, definitely rung true at that time of life for sure. So your time on... Was it a conscious decision from you to move from Thomson to P&O, or was it just one of those things, an opportunity came across your lap and you thought, let's go for it?
Well, as you know, so P&O's head office is in Southampton. It was actually guests that I had on board a Thomson ship said to me, I live in Southampton, you should be doing something with a basically a more premium cruise line. You could have a real career here, and because Thomson was a certain product back at that time for more mass market cruising, whereas P&O obviously was established more from, the 1800s. It was, it had a really great name. So they said to me, why don't you apply, come and have a career as a purser and, come stay with us. If you get an interview, we'll take care of you. And actually to this day, they're almost like surrogate parents to me. So they inspired me. I looked at it. The wage was really good. Though I could see a lot of progression. They were doing world cruising as well. It wasn't just 7-day Mediterranean cruising. So it was just through, again, the connections of the people that you meet. And I think that's one great thing about hospitality is you just don't know who you're going to have a conversation with that day or that evening because of the variety of people that you interact with. So again, by accident, but what a great opportunity that was. And, stayed with them on board for 5 years. Similar thing to your duration as well, yes.
Yeah. I think for me, it was 5 years was the right ending.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a wonderful, wonderful life as a young, free and single guy, seeing the world and all of that. But there's a disconnected element to it as well, right? In terms of the real world,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And that was ultimately what drove me to say, right, okay, well, that and the fact that I met my now wife, who,
Yes.
that had probably a bit of a say in it. But at the same time, when you wake up in the morning and you're in Barcelona and you think, oh, God, we're in Barcelona again.
Yes.
It's time to go.
It is, yes. I mean, I remember people getting excited about being in Monte Carlo, and I think I just wanted to go to bed, in the afternoon and have a siesta. I was no interest to go. And I think you're absolutely right. When you start to become really sort of blasé about those places, and of course, it comes with its sacrifices. I miss various major events, friends' weddings and grandparents' anniversaries, and as much as you could try and navigate those special times to be at home, the reality is it was many months at sea, and that was the nature of the contract. So for me, I think I was missing that as well, that sort of the time that with loved ones back at home and family, parents getting older and things. So
yeah.
After 5 years, I came back, although I did drift back into it again a little bit later. But so I've been on and off ships really for a while. But the great thing was I went into hotels then, into hotel management up in the northeast of England, where I'm from. And it was brilliant to take all those transferable skills from a cruise ship environment, because essentially they're a floating hotel. And I would have never got into a hotel management role had I stayed in HR, had I just had a retail background. So I'm always thankful to my career at P&O for allowing me to then really give me a great foundation to build on it from there within the hotel industry, and then ultimately luxury cruise lines at later years.
Yeah, just describe some of the jobs that you had when you were with P&O.
So essentially, I started on the front desk as what I suppose the hotel equivalent of being a receptionist. Those were called back then as a junior purser, which was actually quite a complicated role in the sense that this was pre-Euro. So you would be in Greece one day, and obviously hundreds and thousands of guests on board, depending on which ship you're on, would have all their Greek drachmas, and they'd be standing along a line buying their postage stamp to send a card home because it's pre-email days. They'd be changing their Greek drachmas into Portuguese escudos because the next port would be heading on to Lisbon, and then the Spanish peseta. So you were dealing with thousands and thousands of pounds equivalent of currency exchange and selling stamps. And then hopefully at the end of the day, God willing, you were able to balance your float and they had to enable you to finish the day and not having lost various amounts of money, which sometimes that was the difficult part. But yes, I managed to master that eventually, and then moved from there to the crew office, because of course on a ship, yes, we talk about hundreds of guests, but there are also hundreds of crew as well. So I used to take care of the equivalent services with the crew, dealing with crew payroll, looking after their passports, the crew welfare side, before eventually my claim to fame was progressing to be a three-stripe officer and what they were known at the time as a passenger services manager. So overseeing all those functions, overseeing the front desk, supporting the crew officer, looking after accommodation. With the ships I was working on was over, I think, 500, 600 rooms, cabins as they were, staterooms as some cruise lines will call them. So a massive 24-hour operation. And I think unlike a hotel where you can suddenly send out for extra staff, or you can, run along to Tesco because you're hosting a wedding and you're 2 lamb shanks short or whatever, you don't have that ability or that luxury on a cruise ship. You've got to really improvise and just think on your feet all the time.
And plan as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally make it up as you go along.
Yeah.
An
There's an
element
awful lot
of
of that. An awful lot of that. Yeah. Can you remember what the nickname was of junior purses on reception? I have something in my head that you
Oh,
scratched
really?
it with. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, the Japs and then the WAPs for the female purses, wasn't there?
That's right. And stamp lickers is what I remember.
Yes. Yes. Which we were back then, yes, for sure.
Indeed,
Oh,
yeah. But do you know what? I still look at that time as such a formative time as a young person, and much like you were saying in terms of having the opportunity to work with humans, and in terms of the people who are coming to you with their problems, basically, and you trying to turn that around and make it into not a disaster for somebody's holiday. The learning that gives you in such a short space of time,
yeah.
who you are at the beginning of a contract versus who you are at the end of a contract. I thought the learning experience was just off the charts.
Yeah. I think, you're always that fresh-faced, energetic, back from leave type person at the beginning. And then usually by the end of I did a few world cruises. I was a broken man usually. I was quite fortunate. I did 2 world cruises as in the role of what they call as a berthing officer. So not the berthing of the ship. I don't have the brains or skill to be navigational or deck related, but the berthing officer of managing people's and their room changes. So moving from cabin to cabin in every port of call, which, as you'll probably know, is quite a unique position because back then they had what they call friendly fours. So you would book a bed within a room.
In inverted commas, anything but friendly. Yeah.
Actually more of a fighting for, because you would have 4 complete strangers due to go on a world cruise, and maybe one of them be cruising to Hong Kong and one to Sydney, and just literally different ages, different backgrounds.
And whoever got in there first gets the bottom bunk.
Gets the bottom bunk, yes. It was always like the 95-year-old with an arthritic hip was always the last one to check in, who would be expected to climb that ladder. But no, so those sort of many days of just sat listening to people, and obviously every excuse and every reason came out of the book of why they should have a room change and why they should be the one that should have a cabin on their own because their cabin mate's coming home at 3 a.m. or the other cabin mate's bringing a stranger back to the room, and obviously everybody's different toilet bathroom habits and all these things would come out, and it was like literally just what a world to be experiencing back then. So I think having listened to that for 3 or 4 months, it would often I'd be ready for my leave by the end of that time, crawling down the gangway.
Yeah, I think we always used to talk about the fact that you were, as you say, you come on board day one, refreshed, go, and then I think you kind of peak by about month 4, and then you're just hanging on.
You're for dear life.
Yeah.
Because it's that absence of a day off, isn't it? And that working routine. So our contracts, 70 hours a week on a cruise ship, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, 4, 5, 6 months at a time. I mean, if you see that job advert, in the Guardian Jobs or your local jobs paper, wanted 7 days a week, next 4 months, 10 hours a day, who really is going to apply for that? But I think the positive side of it that you don't really see is that it is such a great environment from a command, that humour, that sort of interrelationships you have, and you're taken care of as well. The food is there, the laundry's done for you, so there's no commuting, which downside to that means there's no excuse of being late for work. You weren't stuck in any traffic.
Yeah, that was a problem of mine in the first contract. Anyway.
Yes. Yeah, so very unusual times, but certainly I think great from building on from that and knowing that almost you can handle many different things. And you become very resilient as well, don't you? Because you're such used to the stamina you develop in that environment, because it's a late sail. Suddenly there's flights coming in late to Barbados. You're not leaving at 11 o'clock. You're leaving at 3 a.m. in the morning. You're coming into port early. Back in the day, visiting times when ships were still going to St. Petersburg, going into Russia and the formality that would bring, the thousands of people moving out on tour and you managing the expectations of immigration officials there.
Yeah, God almighty. It's a very different time, isn't it? Yeah, unbelievable. I always remember, like, going to bed and the world is fine, and then waking up and coming into work and, everyone that's important is in the back office. and
Yes.
because something has happened, and you like there's lots of chit chat, and you're about to go on a reception shift, and you've no idea what's about to be announced, and then they'll come over the tannoy and say, with regret, we've had an engine malfunction, so we're basically going to crawl to the next port and decamp you all and fly you back home, and then we're going to trickle back to Southampton to get it fixed, or to whatever shipyard it was that we would get it fixed. And I remember that happened on Aurora, and you remember
Yes.
I just remember thinking to myself, "Bed in, lad. This is good. This is going to be tough."
Was that the start of the world cruise, which was like 140 days, but I actually only did 3 days sailing around the Isle of Wight?
It was the inaugural cruise. It was the very first, very first cruise that Aurora was going on. So all of these people who'd obviously, basically ticking off cruise ships as inaugural cruise passengers, it was the only reason they were coming on the cruise. All of that kind of stuff. But the one thing I do remember about that was P&O's response was exceptional in terms of what they threw at the passengers who were, effectively out of an experience.
Yes.
They refunded, they gave them free bar, free shop while they were on board, and then they got another free cruise in the future as well. And I remember thinking, that's how to, because nobody can then stand in front of you and complain, because they're a holiday up for free.
Yeah, and I think, we've been very fortunate, haven't we? We worked for like great cruise lines that ultimately they do the right thing. And I think in any hospitality situation, I think it's that thinking, okay, this is obviously a negative situation, that particular, scenario of not getting the holiday that you were expecting or paid for, but taking that negative situation and actually turning it into a real positive by the way it's been handled. So, and I think we talk about that a lot in hospitality, about that neutral experience that sometimes people can have, whether, it's with a waiter at the table or you're a receptionist when you check into a hotel. But actually, when something needs more interaction, or maybe something isn't quite right, or it's not as your expectation, it's often how that's handled you can take away from that. And I did learn a lot during my days of sitting on that front desk and having that support from senior persons, aspiring people like Jane Green that you mentioned earlier. These people that shape your careers and then give you that.
Out to Liz Kelly, my
yes, oh gosh, another icon. Yes. This is like a podcast about P&O icons.
This is turning into a bit of a just general catch up, really, isn't it?
Yes,
reminisce.
5-star hospitality means having the right people in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly where RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud is the online platform that makes planning rotas, recording attendance, and managing annual leave easy. Its simple, drag-and-drop interface lets you create and share rotas with your team in minutes, while our built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. RotaCloud also makes life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request time off, and pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be.
But no, getting back to message, I suppose, as a training ground, I don't think there was certainly at that time there was a better place to be, because you're dealing with problems 24/7, but you're surrounded by people who care about delivering on those problems, but also supporting you in whatever you need to get you past your learning stage. And I think it's just such a massively important part of anybody coming into whatever part of the industry, really, is that it's one thing to be in a job where you're excited by the day-to-day. It's another thing to then have the support when you are way out of your depth, which is inevitable at some point in your career, isn't it? That you're going to find yourself out of your depth.
Yes, definitely. I think, I hope you'll probably agree with me here, but I think the great thing is also in the ship environment is that you got exposure to many different styles of management and different leaders as well in very short spaces of time, because everyone on board, not just you and I, but our leaders, our senior pursers, our hotel directors were going on vacation themselves. They were going on leave, leaving the ship. You bring somebody else and you suddenly be reporting to somebody else 2 months later, somebody different again, your next contract, your next ship. And that exposure to different styles of managers, you can almost take something different from each one. And I think that's a brilliant aspect of that type of environment of hospitality, especially when you're young, like we were back then, to absorb those different communication skills. I always remember, Ian Winsmythe, one of our other, leaders on board, giving him a letter that we're going out to our guests and get his red Mont Blanc pen out and editing that for me. But it really helped me in the future in honing my communication to ensure that everything from a written perspective was very clear and very, articulate. So I think the good thing about what we've learned from there is that we could be exposed to different styles of leaders in very short spaces of time and not have that one same boss for many years, which, that's great if you do. But that variety, I think, is very helpful.
Yeah, I hadn't really ever thought of that, to be honest. But it probably, without you even realizing it as well, it's making you more adaptable.
Very much so, yeah, because I think that ability, that's exactly the right word there, adapting to that almost new environment, because every leader, every manager has different expectations, and you'd have to often be, adapt your style of working or, change your approach as well. And the communication that you learn from that, there's very fast, responsive leaders that are compared to those that maybe were more methodical, more thoughtful, took longer to make decisions. Was different types there, and I think that's really helped me from that time to adapt to different environments now, and working for different directors and vice presidents as you progress up the hospitality career. It's still the same fundamental framework of like, how do you communicate with these people, what do they expect from you, and also what do you expect from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, I'm not going to make this the P&O episode.
Yeah, sorry.
No. That's all on me. All on me. Yeah, because you'd already moved your story along, and I brought you back. So, so you moved to into the world of hotels, and
yes.
Then what happened after that?
Yeah, so I had a great few years in hotel management up in the Northeast where I'm from. And then I got the opportunity to take all those skills and actually go back into the cruise industry, but into a training role. And by that stage, I was quite tired of working shifts, working weekends, the usual Christmas, or the rest of it in hospitality. That's a normal working day. So I was quite excited by an opportunity to take all these skills and actually go and train crew for their roles on board. So I took what they called a training consultancy contract for 6 months, was actually based out in India for 2 months. Because at that particular point in time, a lot of the crew were sourced and trained out in India and Mumbai, which was a brilliant role that I had there. The project came to an end, the ship launched, all the crew went on board, and I then decided I still looked happy on land and didn't want to go back to sea. So my hospitality career then continued in land, but in restaurant sales and event management. A quite iconic brand, Harvey Nichols, based in London, which many people know as a successful and obviously luxury retail brand, but also a great hospitality business as well, with standalone restaurants in London. I was fortunate to work based at Oxo Tower, iconic building on the South Bank, and look after restaurants, sales and business development there.
And I bet it's quite a different trajectory as well from what you were doing previously, or is it? I mean, is it just one of those things whereby we're talking transferable skills? It might not seem like it's a direct fit in job title terms, but actually just in terms of the skills that you've developed in that time, it was actually quite a natural fit.
Yeah, and I think it's because, I had a really inspiring director, but she was very futuristic in terms of her thinking about sales and about business development. And she really focused actually on relationship building and about communication and about service delivery. So, the way that you communicate with your clients, the way you connect with people, which of course, going back to that cruise background that I had, and also then in training and communication, I was fortunate to be offered the role there. So you're absolutely right. Looking at a piece of paper, it may well not necessarily be something you'd see as a natural progression or an ideal fit. But of course, I know you've had a great career, or still have a great career in recruitment. You'll also know that it's about looking at the skills that somebody has, and not necessarily their previous job title. So what type of person are they here? So I think for me, fundamentally, it was all that whole communication, really, and bringing across back into a new sales role as that I moved into. How do I build relationships? How do I overcome challenges? How do I communicate with people? Which is everything you learn when you're on a reception in a cruise ship, or whether you're communicating with crew members of a different language, different culture. How can you quickly connect with them? So, and Harvey Nichols is an international brand. London's an international city. So it felt right for me, and fortunately felt right for that business to appoint me into that role, which was another great 3 years of my hospitality career.
Right. Yeah, I think we reconnected at that point as well.
We did, yes.
And I remember thinking at the time, God, I would never have picked you for a business development role. That was the, in terms of who you are and who I knew you to be and all of that. But I mean, that kind of comes back to what we've just been talking around. It's from a job title perspective, it's one thing, but actually what you bring to the role. And this is one of the things that I think I just really love about your career. And we'll obviously complete the story at some point. I might be getting ahead of myself here, but you've not had one continuous line up to get to somewhere. You've done a bit of this and a bit of that, and I mean that in the best possible way. And it's almost been because it's a natural thing for you to go and do that thing at that time.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I think it's interesting that you identify that, because I'm not always conscious of it, but you're spot on. And I think I've never made a decision based on a job title or a salary. And I mean that in the sense, of course, we're all working, to earn a living and everything. But even right from the beginning of my career, I think it's always for me about, okay, if you're happy in a role, if you're making a difference, if you're enjoying what you're doing, you'll naturally attract the earnings, you'll naturally excel and develop in that position. So I went into a sales role, and that targeted role with bonuses and everything, but that's because the director that appointed me wanted someone to focus on the service and the relationship, knowing that the sale will actually come organically from that. And it's that age-old phrase about people buy from people that they like. And so I think from that point of view, with me, I've always, yes, moved into different positions, but it's been based on the fact of, will I enjoy that? Will I learn from that? Do I enjoy the people I'm working with? Is this an organization that I feel part of, that I feel included with? And as you probably would have seen in my profile, that I've gone back to businesses as well and gone back to organizations. And I think that's really important too, to sometimes step away, learn a new skill, experience a different environment, and then go back. I don't think there's any hard or fast rule to, I know traditionally you will progress down that career path of always moving to your next position. I think for me, I've always just wanted to find something I've enjoyed doing, and have a laugh at work with great people, and of course, yes, earn a salary that you need, but just enjoy the journey that we're all doing, really.
Yeah, otherwise,
it's
what's
such a big
the point,
part of our
right?
lives, isn't it?
Yeah.
And hospitality works so many hours. You've got to really enjoy it and love it. And I think if you, like you were saying earlier, after that 5 years in a particular job in a ship environment, if it's not something you want to do anymore, I think in hospitality, you can't really fake it, because you are exposed all the time to people. You can't, you've got to be genuine with it, I feel, anyway. So the times I've felt, okay, I need to move on from this, and I've made that decision and looked for a new challenge.
Yeah. So from Harvey Nicks, sorry, am I allowed to call it Harvey Nicks?
Well,
Harvey
they do an
Nichols.
app, so yes, of course. So I then actually had the opportunity, you talked earlier about meeting your lovely wife at sea. By that point, then I was with my partner, and who was connected also with the cruise industry. So the two of us took an opportunity to go back to sea, or actually transferred into a role in HR and training on board. And the cruise lines are brilliant, and they often still are now, depending who you're working with. And we had the opportunity to sail and work together. So we had this 4 months away at sea, home for 2 months together, him progressing and enjoying his work in HR and training, me in a business development and an onboard revenue role at sea. And we ended up doing that together there for 3 years, and then moving across to another brand where, again, he progressed in his HR and training role. And I continued within my sales and business development work, but actually for generating revenue on board the ship. And that's where basically I was for the last decade. So it's strange how it went a bit of a U-turn, but I went back into a different position, and also in a different status as well, being able to sail as a couple, which was great to enjoy that time on board. And like you were saying earlier, you leave because you want to have a family and you want to have that stability at home, but actually we had the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, again, a very different type of position, certainly on the face of it. What was the job? Because I don't think this really existed too much when we were working together at Sea. But obviously, I suppose like most things, it's a case of, well, with the rising costs of everything, and this is way before the time that we're in now, revenue opportunities are, massively important, aren't they, to sustainability of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's that whole commercial goal, and that was whole, I think, work many years ago around the fact that, in a cruise ship environment, but also like hotels on land now, like restaurants, you go into a restaurant and they're trying to sell you the still water, the sparkling water before they'll offer you the tap water. There's the hotel room reception check-in trying to upgrade you, wanting to use the hotel spa. Again, same on the cruise ship experience. It was about maximizing that onboard revenue, really, to help the profitability of the business, but also to give the guests an enhanced great time, to ensure that they were enjoying the maybe wines that they would have never thought of buying before in the restaurant, or having that unique spa experience, going into a casino and actually learning how to play blackjack and maybe losing the odd 20 quid here and there, or actually maybe winning. So my role back then when I went on board was to really sort of look at harmonizing those messages, making sure we connected with our guests, ensuring that it was almost a seamless onboard experience for them, because it wasn't just about those shoreside activities, yes, being in Barcelona or Monte Carlo, going out there, but when they came back on board, ensuring they had a great time, but most importantly, from a business perspective, ensuring that it was profitable as well, and that you made that onboard revenue, generated it, which is my responsibility for 3 years with Holland America Line. And then from there, I moved on to Seabourn for 6 years, looking after future cruise sales. So actually capturing the guests while they were there in the moment on board, ensuring that they deposited and secured their next future cruise booking with Seabourn, rather than them go out there and maybe see marketing or advertising messages from competitor brands.
Yeah, and well, I mean, that kind of concludes your rise to Seabourn, as it were, because as we've already alluded to, they are, I mean, really at the pinnacle of the cruise industry from a luxury perspective. You've been with them for how long now?
So I've actually worked for the company for about 8 years. So obviously the COVID times came, badly impacted the cruise industry. So I took some time out there, took a different opportunity for a couple of years and went back last year. But out of my entire 20 odd years at sea, then Seabourn accounts for almost half of that time. So yeah, great brand. And it's been fortunate for me to come back into, again, a whole new role, but going back again to that service hospitality type approach, but this time looking after guest speakers and a different aspect of cruising.
Yeah, but still relationships are at the heart of that, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, because we do attract amazing talent on board. I mean, just this week I was on one of our ships escorting a Paralympian, gold medalist, really exceptional lady that the registered blind, has achieved so much in her life, and she'll be coming to share her stories with our guests later this year. So I had the great fortune to meet her, show around at a ship in one of our ports here in the UK. So, and again, it's that whole relationship, working closely with her agent, then also directly with her, ensuring that she's set up for success. And then again, ensuring that our guests on board really get the most out of that particular speaker sailing with them.
Yeah, it sounds fabulous. Yes, well, maybe you and I will talk off camera about Seabourn in a lot more detail.
Because I think you could be a great future guest speaker with us, telling us all the stories about your times at sea.
Oh, okay, if you want, yeah. Yeah, no,
there's definitely a book in you there somewhere, isn't there?
Well, I think there's a book in everybody that's worked at hospitality, is there not? The stories, which is probably quite a nice segue, actually, into do you have any funny stories from your career that you can share with us?
Oh gosh, right. Well, yeah, they're appropriate to share.
Well, that is the thing.
Yeah, you know what? I think you go back to that whole, you work hard, you play hard. I've been in some really great fun, interesting situations. I mean, as you know, it's about to start again. If maybe it hasn't already, the Strictly Come Dancing is very popular in this country. In the US, it's Dancing with the Stars, the same concept. So one of the brands I was with on board, they did Dancing with the Stripes. So I went through this intensive training with one of the professional dancers, and the ship was one of our Holland America Line ships, had over 3,000 guests on board, and we had to perform live in the theatre on the stage. So myself and a professional dancer with a rendition from Saturday Night Fever, which was totally horrific. And you understand that bright lights and that being on the stage and things. So unfortunately for me as well, that was during the time people do have video cameras and recordings of it, which I managed to try and sort of avoid or keep off the mass market internet. But yeah, I think there's those sort of situations which are very highly exposed and funny times. The people that I've met as well along the way, I think was very fortunate to meet, those sort of like childhood heroes that you have. Like, for example, Rusty Lee, the famous TVM Caribbean.
Oh, she's awesome.
Yeah, she sailed with us before. Hilarious. And, what the reality of working with her or sailing with her is exactly like how she is on the television. So I've had some great fun times with her when she's been on board. And then, of course, there's those times that you're probably more likely to forget. I remember at one stage with colleagues who you probably know of late at night needing to deliver takeaway pizza to a room and borrowing a mobility scooter to take that because it's quite a long ship and I didn't want the pizza to get cold. So using a mobility scooter to deliver that from one end of the ship to the other, which I suppose when you look back maybe was, yes, humorous, but maybe an action that maybe I wouldn't want to repeat these days.
No. But I think we were all different human beings in that time, and you've got to do these things in order to get the mistakes out of your system, haven't you? That's the way. Yeah, that's the way I looked at it, anyway. Yeah,
and said scooter was returned safely and recharged. In
yes.
time before it was needed for its primary owner.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, looking back, there are some many good times. And I think that's the great fun about it. You work with colleagues, don't you? Get on really well with them. And you're in maybe a hotel environment or, a restaurant or wherever it may be that you work in hospitality. And you go home, you don't really have that much interaction with them outside of work. But I was even to this day, I've made such wonderful friends that I still keep in contact with from that time, and share a few stories as well that often sometimes you forget or maybe block from your mind.
Yeah, well, everybody has a different experience from your own, don't they? So what you remember is not necessarily what other people remember,
yes,
and vice versa.
Or what you hope other people forget.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, well, there was definitely times like that for sure. But great. Well, I mean. Look, what's next for you? I mean, I suppose you've got your feet under the table in this fantastic role. It sounds like you are as happy as a pig in the mire in what you're doing.
Yeah, and again, I think it goes back, isn't it, to what we talked about earlier. I've got a phenomenal director who I report to. He's really inspiring. He's given me really great opportunities to take this position and really diversify our onboard guest speakers. So we're moving well beyond the traditional sort of destination lecturer that you would have on some ships. And we call ours actually conversationalists, because it's not just about what they do on stage, it's about their interactions off stage, hosting tables, escorting tours. So I've been really fortunate to meet many and in the future communicate with many new basically people from different areas and walks of life. So it's less than a year for me in this current position, so I've still got a lot more to do, and that's my focus really in the coming year. And then let's see what takes us from there really, but for now I've got a lot in this role to get on with, and that's my focus really for the coming year.
Fantastic. I mean, I think you've already kind of answered this question loosely through the conversation that we've had, but what would be your main reasons why somebody should join hospitality as a career?
I think there are the people that you meet. I think, those lifelong friendships that you form, the exposure you have also to different cultures, different nationalities, and not only maybe in the environment that you're working in, but the opportunity to travel with whoever you're working with. So if you are in a hotel, a restaurant, a cruise ship, wherever it may be, that you're in the service industry, that opens many doors, not only here in the UK or overseas or wherever you're based listening to this podcast, but also the opportunity to travel with that and get paid along the way. So I think, and most importantly, the fun, the elements that you have. Most people from a user perspective, the guest, the customer, the client, whatever it is, are there to have a good time in the hospitality environment. And yes, of course, there's always those challenges that come up, but you're in that positive environment. And I think in the world we live in today, it's great to go to work where you're making people happy, you're delivering a great experience, and you're making a difference each day. And I think from that, you get a lot of job satisfaction. And perks as well, travel perks, discount savings. I mean, the hospitality industry, you can really enjoy things that maybe you wouldn't have exposure to if you're working in a bank or, in an office environment. And I think you can also enjoy that with your family and friends and share those experiences with other people as well that, again, might be new for them. Yeah. So enjoy the travel, meet great people, and enjoy the perks that environment brings for you.
Yeah, and take the learning of the problem solving element to the role as well. Another memory just sparked. Isn't it amazing how irate people can get over under or overcooked broccoli? That's what I always remember from my time in F&B on the ship is that I can't believe somebody will lose their proverbial stuff just because their broccoli was a little bit undercooked or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, when you deal with people, especially also in an overseas environment, they've traveled, they're tired, they're out of their comfort zone, then they're in an unfamiliar environment. I mean, the way people react is quite astonishing, isn't it? And we'll have both seen quite extreme situations of that. And it's character building when you deal with those scenarios, for sure.
Yeah.
But generally, most of the time, people are great to deal with, but it's that usual 10% of them that cause 90% of the headaches for us.
Yes, indeed. It's probably even more like 1% of them, isn't it? That's the But the rest of them are all wonderful.
Yes, yeah, definitely. It's a great way to meet many people, both, as I say, as the professionally as the customer, but also the team that you work with.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Well, look, thank you so much, Marc, for coming on and sharing your story. It's been great to catch up as well. And wish you guys all the very best with your next chapter, whatever that looks like. And I'll have to make a point of getting on a Seabourn cruise at some point in my life.
You do, yeah. It's made for you and Helen. And yeah, just to inspire your listeners to, whether it's for themselves or, one of the family members, but anyone should try the work and experience a cruise ship, either as a guest or as an employee, because it's just a phenomenal way to travel, isn't it, really? And learnings, whether, as I say, you are the guest on board or if you're an employee, it's really take some great experiences from it, as you and I have.
Indeed. Absolutely. Marc, thank you so much. And wish you all the very best.
Cheers, Phil. Great to catch up with you.
Yeah, you too. Cheers now.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye. And there we have it. I was thrilled to get some time with Marc, showcasing what a wonderful and varied career you can have whilst working in the cruise line industry, whilst also showing some of the amazing experiences you can have along the way. We'll be back as usual at 8 p.m. next Wednesday for another story from hospitality. So until then, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.